So let's continue looking at the language basics. Now we looked at the first four. That leaves us with comments, literals, identifiers and keywords. So let's start off by looking at comments. Now there's three different ways of adding comments into PHP. Two of these are from C and C++, and one of them is from Unix. And you can use any one you like. I think this is easier just to show in an example. So let's bring up some PHP code with the comments inside. So on the second line, you can see that I've used the // commenting style. And what happens there is that anything from that point onwards on that line will be ignored by the PHP interpreter. So that's really useful if you need to put a comment to yourself in there. It will just be ignored. Similarly, we can use the hash symbol, and you can see that one used on the third line. If you want to do a series of lines, then you can use the / and the */, and you can have as many lines as you like between those 2 points, and everything in red will just be ignored by the PHP interpreter. Now, sometimes we use commenting to help sort of debug a program. We might sort of comment out multiple lines to sort of narrow down which one isn't working. So you'll see commenting is quite useful. Let's move on to literals then. Now literals are actually literally values that occur inside the program. So for example, it could be an integer like 2001. It could be a hexadecimal number that looks like that. It could be a floating point number. Now those are called floats. So 1.4142. That's a number that's got a decimal part. It could be a string, and strings are series of characters wrapped up with double quotes or single quotes. And you may remember that we talked about those using when we did some work in SQL. So here's hello world, which is a string in double quotes, and here's hi, which is a string wrapped up in single quotes. You can use either in PHP. And there's this special kind of literal, which is called a boolean, a bool, and that's the word true or false. And we'll talk about those a bit later on as well. There's one other thing that we have inside the language, which is this special thing, which is called null. And that's particularly value, this idea of no value when it comes to things to do with databases and things, but we'll talk about that at another point. Let's move on to keywords. So I'm just going to show you some of these. These are special words that are built into the PHP language. Often they're called reserved words. What it means is these words have particular functionality inside PHP. That means we can't use them in different ways. They're reserved for the PHP language. And already we've used the print statement, for example. Now there are all sorts of data types. Those literals that we looked at earlier on actually fall into these data types, if you like: integers, floating points, strings and booleans. And there are the other ones, which are sort of special ones. I won't talk about arrays and objects just yet, but just to give you some examples, you can see that PHP can handle a massive range of whole numbers, for example. I think that's 2,000 million, so plus 2,000 million to minus 2,000 million. We've got real numbers, very small numbers, very high numbers. That whole notion of times 10 to the minus 308 here, for example, 15 digits of accuracy. And here are strings, and as I've indicated already, strings, which are a series of characters that we'll be manipulating, can be wrapped up in single quotes or double quotes. And in fact, this is really important because a lot of the work that we do with PHP is actually manipulating HTML, creating HTML on the fly and printing it into the page, which is then sent to the browser. So you can use double quotes, and the nice thing about using double quotes is that if you want to print single quotes inside, you can do it in this style. So you can put double quotes around the outside of the series of characters, and then you can use single quotes on the inside like that. Alternatively, you can do it the other way around, and you could put single quotes on the outside, and you could put double quotes on the inside. So on that first line, you can see it says, "He then said goodbye and left." Now, the reason that that's really interesting and important, of course, is because we use a lot of double quotes in HTML for the HTML attributes. So if we are going to be printing HTML out, you may find that you do a lot of single quotes on the outside, double quotes on the inside that look like this. Now there are all sorts of string escapes. Now these are special characters that you can embed inside a quote if it's wrapped up in double quotes to print special characters. We probably won't be doing many of these initially. We might come back to them at some point. So for example, if you look at the second one, \n, let's say that we wanted to actually insert a new line into the series of characters that will make up the HTML. We could do it like this. You can see it says, he then said goodbye and left. And you can see that \n. And what that's instructing the browser to do is to insert a new line at that point. Now, if you try that out, you may find that, in fact, it doesn't display in quite the way you're expecting. I've said it inserts a new line, but you need to think about where that new line actually is. Here's an example of inserting HTML elements into a print statement, and here you can see I've inserted some paragraphs. And if you look at this, it may give you a clue as to why the previous page didn't work in the way that you think it might do. Quick look at operator precedence then. All programming languages have a table that looks like this, and most of them have a pattern of operators and precedence that works in this style. So if you look under the operator column, you can see there's a whole bunch of different operators here. Some of them will be familiar. For example, if you look at line, the one which says precedence 15, you can see that's the plus symbol. So plus and minus have precedence of 15. Whereas if you look for multiplication, which is next to the 16, multiplication has a higher precedence. And what that actually translates into is if we try to do some maths, multiplication would be done before addition. So it's just as you expect from BODMAS. So something like this will work in the way that you expect. 3 plus 4 times 7, well, the multiplication would happen before the addition. So it will do 4 times 7, and then it will add the 3 on because of that precedence table. So those are all the language basics. You can see we've ploughed through all of those. What we'll talk about next time is identifiers.